How can we have hope despite the crisis that we may be facing? Many people are facing the crisis because of the pandemic, but the Bible shows that it's possible to have hope. This is Karita Mbagara, welcoming you to CITAM Church Online. I want us to look from the book of Psalms and read Psalm 13, which I believe shows us the journey of how one can get out of the problem of hopelessness and get to a place of hope despite the crisis you may be going. When we read the first two verses, we find that David was asking, "How long, Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I wrestle with my thoughts and day after day have sorrow in my heart? How long will my enemy triumph over me?" We see that you can have a crisis, at least from this passage, for three reasons. First, the length of period that you have been at it. We find that David is asking repeatedly, how long, how long, how long? In other words, he has waited for God's help for a long time. And that can, cause you to go through a situation where you feel like it's over because of the length of period that you have waited for help. But secondly, he also says, "How long will you hide your face from me?" Meaning that when we do not sense the presence of God, we don't feel that he is there, we are likely to go under and perhaps even give up. But thirdly, he also talks for how long must I wrestle with my thoughts, mental anguish. So it is the length of time. It is also not sensing the presence of God in your life. You feel like when you pray, your prayers are not going, to God. They are reaching the ceiling and falling. But thirdly, because of the mental anguish. And we have noticed that many people have had mental anguish to the point where some have killed their loved ones and then killed themselves. Others are in depression. But in this psalm, we find that actually at the end, David is singing to the Lord. And how did he get there? Verse 3 has an indication, for he says, "Look on me and answer. Lord my God, give light to my eyes, and or I will sleep in death." He says, "Answer me." And you see, God can't answer what you are not saying. I think part of the solution is that David is in constant prayer to God. He is still praying despite the circumstances that are adverse. And I want to encourage you, you who feels like God has forgotten you, continue in prayer. Continue communicating with God. The truth is this, God does not change. He is the same yesterday when you had a very high, time of blessing, yesterday when things were going well, but he's also the same today when you feel like you are being forgotten, and he will be the same tomorrow when things will be resolved. God is not like us. He is not in any way unreliable. He is consistently true to his character of faithfulness, of kindness. But when we go through trouble, we become like Jeremiah. And you could check in the book of Lamentations chapter 3, verse 19 tells us that Jeremiah was thinking about his troubles. And he says in verse 20 that his heart was downcast. But when he looked to the faithfulness of God, that the mercies of the Lord are renewed every morning, he says, "Therefore I have hope." What is hope? Hope is the expectation of God's, confident expectation of God's promises. And that's what he is telling us. And we also see that in this psalm, David is doing the same. In verse 5 we read, "But I trust in your unfailing love. My heart rejoices in your salvation." Notice, it is the same psalm. David has been in trouble and still is in trouble, but he has continued in prayer. And now he says, "I think about your unfailing love, and therefore I trust you. I think about your nature. I think about your character. it is when we think of this God who does not change that we are able to get out of maybe not get out of the trouble, but at least we go through it with confidence and with assurance that all will be well. And he says, I rejoice. Before he was asking how long. Now he says, I rejoice in your salvation. And even beyond it, he says in verse 6, I will sing the Lord's praise, for he has been good to me. That suggests that also he has thought backwards to the things that God has been doing in his life. So there is the meditation of who God is, but there is also thinking about the nature of God and God's activity in his life in the past. And I want to say, if you think of the things that God has resolved in the past for you, and you think of the nature and the character of God, you too will have hope when things are thick. And that's what I want to encourage you. Don't give up. We know that it is a tough season that many of us are going through, but that notwithstanding, we can still be more than conquerors when we do those things. Continue in prayer. Think about who God is and his nature, his unchanging character, and thirdly, what he has done in the past. And you will find that despite the problems you have hope that tomorrow will be good. And indeed, it will be better than today. May the Lord bless you as you think about what I have said. If this is a blessing, please share with somebody else. And also subscribe so that we can be able to always inform you when we have a clip, and you will be blessed as you do that. See you next time. Amen.